I always knew why I was doing what I was doing. I'm 38 years old right now, right? And sometimes people ask me, Zuby, when you were selling your CDs on the street in 2006 or when you quit your job in 2011, did you think you'd be doing what you're doing now? Did you think it would go this far? Did you think you'd have millions of followers and you'd be connected to Elon Musk and Rogan? And I'm like, yeah, I did. When I was standing on the street selling my CDs, I didn't know it would happen exactly this way, but I knew that I would reach millions of people.
Shout out to Zuby.
I knew that one day millions of people around the world would give a crap about what I'm doing and what I have to say. And I remember when I quit my job in 2011, and a lot of my colleagues and people I worked with and whatever were like, oh, how long are you going to give it? The music thing, the entrepreneur thing, how much time are you going to give it? Like 1 year, 2 years, whatever. I was like, I'm done. You don't get it. Like I'm not coming back. I'm done. And I'm going to be successful.
Today, on That One Time, I'm joined by Zuby. Zuby is a British-Nigerian rapper, author, podcaster, and fitness expert who has built a global brand independently, reaching number 12 on the iTunes hip-hop charts and selling tens of thousands of albums without a major record label. With over 2 million followers and appearances on top shows like The Joe Rogan Experience and The Rubin Report, Zuby excels at leveraging social media and personal development to inspire millions. In this episode, you'll learn how Zuby overcame industry challenges, integrated health and mindset into his business strategies, and built a successful, multifaceted career on his own terms. So I think you'll really enjoy this episode with Zuby. And if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe. 92.4% of people who listen to this podcast are yet to subscribe, and it helps us more than you could ever imagine. Zuby, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going? Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Same to you. So I've done some research on you after a mutual intro to our mutual podcast guest, Dre. And the more I dug into you, the more interested and curious and very excited about this conversation I got. You have a deep insight into a lot of things. And I'm really looking forward to chatting into some more depth with a bunch of different topics because you touch on so many different things. So, let's get stuck into it. So I'd like to begin in 2006. You're 20 years old. You've independently released your first album, Commercial Underground, while studying computer science at Oxford. What made you want to make the leap into music? And then what made you want to navigate that as an independent artist?
Great question. So I've been a hip hop fan since I was about 11 or 12 years old. I went to boarding school in the UK from the age of 11. So I grew up in Saudi Arabia. And between the ages of 11 and 20, so 7 years of boarding school and then 3 years of university, I was constantly back and forth between the two countries. During term time, I was in the UK, and then I'd go back home to Saudi. And both of my groups of friends in both countries, a lot of us just got into hip hop and rap music. 11, 12, 13-year-olds. We're listening to Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Nas, Jay-Z, all of this stuff, which is probably not age appropriate. And so I'd been a rap fan all throughout my teenage years, but I'd never actually tried writing or performing my own stuff. When I got to university, I was 18 years old. And on my floor, one of my friends, a guy named Chris, he actually had a basic recording studio set up in his dorm room. And there was this website called soundclick.com where you could download beats off of the internet. You could get them for free or you could pay for them. And it was just a place to get beats. People now use things like BeatStars and perhaps even SoundCloud for this. But at the time it was SoundClick. So I wrote my very first verse when I was stuck in an airport layover. I was traveling from the UK to Nigeria, London to Lagos, if I remember correctly. And I had a layover in Paris in Charles de Gaulle airport. And I was by myself. I was bored, didn't have much to do. I just had my MP3 player and I had a pad and a pen. And I just started jotting down some lyrics just out of boredom. And I found it came to me quite naturally. And then after that, I was in Nigeria for several weeks just for vacation with my family. And I just kept writing and I started to record the lyrics into my phone just with the audio recorder. And I played it to my siblings. I played it to my cousins. This was just a cappella at the time. So this was before having any beats, and they liked it. So when I got back to university a few weeks later, I was downloading beats off of this website, and I started writing stuff to the beats. So I started creating some just free verses, and then some of them were actual songs. And then my very first song I ever made, I remember very clearly, it was called The Bad Man. I downloaded a beat produced by a Canadian producer. I remember it well. His name was Ray's Ruckus, 18-year-old producer at the time from Canada. And I downloaded this beat, and I just did a three verses on it. And I took this song and I just played it to people. I attached it to emails and sent it to my friends in university. And people were like, "Hey, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. You should keep it up." I don't know if they were gassing me up or if they actually liked it, but I like to think that they actually did like it. And then I made another song called Oh No. And then I made a third song called Tonight. Those were my first 3 songs. And I was just playing these songs to people. Remember, I'm in the university atmosphere and environment at this time. So I'm surrounded by lots of young people, mostly between, let's say, 18 and 22. And so it was a great environment just to get people's attention and to show people things. So I started to get some interest on that. There was a local magazine in Oxford called Night Shift Music Magazine. I believe it's still going. I'm not sure, but I hope it's still going. And I submitted these 3 songs to them, and they actually gave me demo of the month. And this magazine was actually quite known for being, they were quite known for being quite harsh and critical. Like if they didn't like something, they would not pretend to like it, but they gave me demo of the month. And so that created a little bit of local buzz for me. And then I made a 4th song called Step Into Me. And Step Into Me, this was the 4th song I ever made. I remember I wrote it at my sister's house. It was produced by a guy called Anno Domini Beats, who still produces some tracks for me to this day. Shout out to Adrian. So this is going back like 18 years. So this song was my first song that people like really, really liked. Like people really like, as in I'd play this song to DJs. I sent it to BBC Introducing, the radio show in Oxford, and they used to play it on their station. And then eventually I made a music video for it. It was my first ever music video. You can still find it on YouTube all these years later. It's not uploaded on my channel, but if you search Zuby Step Into Me, if you want to see 19-year-old Zuby wandering around Oxford University rapping, then his pre-beard, then that song made a bit of an impact. It was played on a channel called Channel U, which was a hip hop. It was like an underground hip hop channel that used to, in the UK, that all the upcoming independent artists used to send their songs to. So it got playlisted on there, meaning that for several weeks, my video was playing on national television here and there. And again, this is all just as an independent artist, as a student in university. And I started doing some performances locally, just in Oxford to begin with. And people were enjoying what I did. I made the I'm Down with Zuby, Are You t-shirts. It was just a black t-shirt with my logo in white, and it just said, I'm down with Zuby, Are You. I first made one just for myself. And my friends were like, hey, I want one of those. So I remember I went back to Saudi Arabia. I went to a print shop there, and I made like 20 of them. And I just came back and I just gave them to my friends. And then more people were like, yo, how much are those? I want to buy one. And so I started hustling t-shirts. I can't even remember if this was before or after I'd actually released the album. But I had dozens of people at my uni wearing these I'm Down with Zuby, Are You t-shirts. And then once I had my first 8 songs done, well, not my first, sorry. I had the first 3, which didn't go on Commercial Underground. And then the next 8 songs I recorded all became my first album, Commercial Underground. And I put that out there just independently. This is 2006. This is pre-streaming. This is just like very early iTunes, I believe, but everyone was still buying CDs. So I just got 50 CDs made. My friend Alex actually took, if you look at the album cover, one of my friends actually took that photo again in my dorm room. All of this was just happening in dorm rooms. So we did that. I got a guy named Craig Marcus, the graphic designer, Shout out to Craig to knock up the artwork. And I made 50 CDs to begin with, and I sold them all in a week. £5 each. I was like, cool. I just made 250 quid through my music, of which about 200 quid is profit. So I took that and I made another 100. Boom. I sold them all. And then I went back and I did 1,000. I did the big 1,000. And I managed to shift maybe another 100 just through like acquaintances and people I know and sort of social circle. And now I have like hundreds and hundreds of CDs just in cardboard boxes sitting around everywhere. And I'm like, man, how am I going to sell the rest of these CDs? I had like 28,000 fans on MySpace, friends, quote unquote, on MySpace. And I was like, maybe I can sell it on there. And, I only managed to sell maybe like a dozen CDs. And then I had a light bulb moment. So I remember around this time, 2005, 2006, I had bought a few CDs off of independent artists just on the street, particularly in parts of London, like Leicester Square, Oxford Street. I'd met, a bunch of artists, and I had bought their CDs, and some of them had actually been pretty good. So I was like, maybe I can sell my CDs on the street. I've exhausted the people I know. Maybe I can just talk to strangers and sell to them. I've seen other guys do it, and I know that that's a thing. So, okay, Adam, this was another life-changing moment. Very first time I went out on the street to sell my CDs. By the way, if you want me to pause at any point in any of these stories, let me know.
Man, this is great. This is great.
Okay. Yeah, because a lot of people don't ask me about the early days. A lot of people start with the story just from a few years ago. So I think the first time I ever went out to sell, I don't believe I did it in Oxford. If I remember correctly, it was actually in London. I went to Leicester Square in London, and I remember I just took 5 CDs with me. I was like, all right, I don't know what this is going to be like. I don't know how easy or hard this is to do. I don't even know, do I sell these for £4, £5? Like, I don't know. And a lot of people know me now as someone who's pretty extroverted and good at communicating with people, can make friends with anybody everywhere. But I was actually a pretty shy kid. And even when I was in my late teens, I wasn't super shy, but certainly the prospect of walking up to a complete stranger and talking to them, let alone trying to sell them something, was not exactly in my comfort zone. So I remember being out there. I'm 19 years old. I'm in Leicester Square, one of the busiest areas of the busiest city in the UK and one of the busiest cities in the world, i.e. London. And people are just buzzing around everywhere. And I'm just standing there. I've got this backpack with a few CDs in it and one CD in my hand. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Who do I talk to? What do I say? How do I do this? So I'm kind of just sort of standing there for maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes before I even approach anybody. And I'm just overwhelmed. There's so much going on. It's noisy, hustle bustle. Everyone's just running around. And I can't remember who the first person I spoke to was. I kind of wish I did, because it was the first of many hundreds of thousands over the next decade. But I remember the very first person I spoke to did stop. The first person I spoke to stopped and listened. And I had my MP3 player. I remember I had an MP3 player at the time. It wasn't even, again, you have to remember, this is 2006. So this wasn't even smartphone era, right? So I had like a separate MP3 player with the album preloaded to it. And I did something different to a lot of the other artists who were out there selling on the street. 2 things. Number one is I always had my CDs professionally packaged. I never just had like a blank CDR with some scrawl written on it in a Sharpie. My CDs always looked professional. And I also let people listen to my music. So most other artists, they would just talk, right? They just talk and convince people to buy the CD. And I was like, no, I think the best way to sell my music is for people to hear it. So I talked to this guy. I let him listen. I can't for the life of me remember if the first person I spoke to bought or not. But I remember after speaking to him and having a positive interaction, I was like, hey, well, if I can do that once, I can do it twice. I can do it 10 times. I can do it 100 times. So I remember during the course of that day, my confidence level just growing as I was out there. I remember the first CD I sold, someone gave, not the first CD I sold to a stranger, getting a stranger to, talk to me and be like, you know what, like, I like what I hear. I want to support you. Gives me £5 in exchange for the CD. And I pocket that £5 and I'm just like, man, okay, if I can do it once, I can do it again. And so I was out there for several hours, and within 2 to 3 hours, I sold all 5 CDs. And I was just like, man, I just did something. I did something I've never done. And so it wasn't about the 5 CDs. It was about the fact that, okay, I had an idea in my head and I have just tangibly proven that I can do this. This was not in my comfort zone when I left the house this morning. And I've just unlocked a new skill, not just a way to make money or a way to get my music out, but just like, I didn't know I had the capacity to do this. So next day I come back with 10 CDs. Boom, all gone. I come back with 20. Boom, all gone. So I spent that whole summer. This would have been, oh boy, I think summer 2006, if I remember correctly. I was just out there almost every day around Leicester Square, Piccadilly Circus area, just in central London, in the West End, talking to people all day, every day. And it became, that was like my summer job. Lots of other students were out there doing internships with investment banks or accountancy firms, law firms, whatever. I was just there slanging CDs. I was so just out there hustling CDs all summer, man. And yeah, long story short, I ended up selling over 3,000 copies of my very first album, which is not bad going.
Not at all. Yeah.
Yeah, which is not bad going. And yeah, that was the birth of Zuby, the CD hustler. And
nice.
Yeah, I didn't totally stop doing that until 2019.
Oh, wow. No, brilliant. There's so many different things that have popped up in that story. I feel like I want to make a couple of comments. There's a commonality I see between cold sales, like door-to-door sales, just standing there getting your ass handed to you by by strangers, that leads into some success in business down the line. I've heard it so many times. So that checks out. And I noted that you you made a point to be much more professional in your branding very early on, because there's another thought that I had around it, being that when you're dealing with strangers, when you're dealing with people who don't know you, every little slight interaction that you have with them is them sizing you up and determining whether you're a fraud or you're a genuine individual. And just making that little bit of extra effort on that branding CD shows this person cares. This person is more likely going to be a reasonable human that I can potentially trust. It's like building those trust exercises. So the thought was, really focusing on the image when you are in a very cold environment, it really has a massive impact. So 2006, last album you released was 2021. So what's that now? 6 albums, is that correct?
6 albums and 3 EPs. So 9 releases in total. Yeah.
Great. So if you were beginning your music career again, 2024, almost 2025, with what you know now, what would the playbook be that you would take across releasing, marketing, branding, network? Like, what would you do if you were to advise young 19-year-old Zuby, Zuby the second, in Oxford, wanting to make this his career?
Well, let me clarify the question. Are you talking about if the time were 2024 or if it were 2006 again? Because those are very different questions.
So now, okay. Yeah, 2024. Yeah.
So 2024 in the new digital and social era and streaming era.
Yeah.
Okay. How would I approach it? That's a brilliant question. No one's ever asked me that, so good on you. I would probably, I'm trying not to just answer this in a way which is everything that I already do, but I think I think what I would do is I'd apply elements of what I did with embracing lots of new technology, right? So at the time when I was starting out, the primary technology for listening to music was CDs, social media was in its infancy. Smartphones were just starting to come into existence. There was no streaming, even downloading legally. When people thought of downloading, people's brains jumped to illegal downloading. Yeah, exactly. LimeWire, because all that stuff. And now when people think of downloading, obviously they tend to think of legal, right? We're kind of past the insane piracy of that era. So I would certainly give the same advice, which is to focus on the fan base. Fan base and audience are the lifeblood of every artist, every creative, and customers are the lifeblood of any business. If you don't have an audience, you don't have anything. So don't get hung up on signed, unsigned, independent, major, all of these other labels. Just go straight to the people. And it's never been easier to go straight to the people. I mean, I used to do it in person, face to face, one-on-one. And I still do that to some degree, just not in terms of hustling my CDs like that. But now you can just reach a global audience. Like borders have been, as far as the digital world is concerned, there's no borders. So you could be an artist in the UK or in Australia, and you could have your biggest audience be in Germany or in the US or Canada or whatever. So the first thing I'd say is, hone your craft, get good at what it is that you're doing, get good at creating, and use these platforms. Use these platforms. Find out what you're good at and what you enjoy and just milk it, whether that is YouTube or Instagram or X or some combination of these. It could be TikTok. I'm not a TikTok guy, but I guess if I were 18 years old right now and I'm trying to reach particularly a younger audience, I'd certainly want to be on TikTok as a musician. I just don't care for the platform. I've never even downloaded the app. But it would be wise to be on there. Just all of these free methods to get stuff out there. Just do it. And recognize that people don't just want to know about your music in most cases. They want to know about you. I would think of myself like a media company. I'd go beyond just thinking of yourself as a rapper or as an artist. I'd be like, think of yourself as a media company. So don't limit yourself even to just doing music or putting things out only about music. Share other aspects of your life. If that means doing vlogs, then do vlogs. If it means doing live streaming, do live streaming. If it means sharing other interests that you have, then just do it all. Just put stuff out there and really focus on those connections. That's what I would say. And I would also encourage him to, or any other young artist out there, to not forget about the real world. So much stuff now is social media and it's digital and it's all happening through these screens. The primary screen has gone from being the big TV screen to being the little one we carry around in our hand or in our pocket all day long. But don't abandon the physical realm, right? Don't abandon meat space. Don't forget that there's a lot of power.
Meat space is hilarious. I've never heard someone call it meat space before.
Right. Like there's a lot of power in looking people in the eye, shaking people's hands, being out there, doing live performances, doing events, just connecting with people any way that you can. I'll tell you what I would say. I would probably still, maybe I wouldn't do the CD hustle because people don't buy CDs like they used to now. But I would still probably encourage them to, go out there in your local neighborhood, travel to a few different cities, maybe just get some flyers, print out some flyers, print out 10,000 flyers, A6 or A5 size with your image, your social media links, your YouTube channel, where people can check you out and talk to people, introduce yourself, to carry those things everywhere with you, everyone you meet, whatever country you're in, whatever city you're in, talk to people and get them to check it out that way. In fact, that's even easier because there's no financial barrier to entry. If all you're asking of people is watch my music video or check out my latest song on Spotify or on Apple Music, why wouldn't they do it? I'll tell you what's even better. Put one of those QR codes on there. And you know what? Actually, get them to do it while you're talking to them. Show them, hey, scan that code and a lot of people you'll stop. Everyone's got their phone on them already. A lot of them probably already have Spotify installed. Everyone's got YouTube. So man, I would be like, yeah, do it now. Like check it out. Or if you're in really like scan it, and you don't even have to listen to it like right now while I'm standing here, but just scan that and then check it out. And you know what? If you like it, shoot me a DM on Instagram and let me know your feedback. I'd do something like that. And you could get hundreds of new people every single day in the real world checking it out. And then of course you do your online promo as well. That's what I think I would do. So I would combine elements of the old school mentality and the old school hustle with this new digital and social media realm. And I think actually in terms of building an audience and listenership, it would be easier. You'd need some type of, you'll need to have some type of job to have an income in the meantime, because you're not really going to be capitalizing that hard. I'll tell you one more thing I'd tell them is I'd say in this era is think of your music as marketing and advertising, and then have something else that's the primary product. Your primary product and income earner doesn't have to be your music. It might be merchandising. It could be caps. It could be T-shirts. It could be hoodies. Depending on what type of artist you are, it could be all sorts of things. So find out what it is that your audience likes and resonates with, and you can use the music and the content to draw them in, and then you can redirect them to that other thing that actually makes you some money.
Yeah, no, I think there was a lot of nuggets in that. There's a couple of comments I'm thinking. There's an idea around, I can't remember who said it. I'm just trying to find who said it. But basically the idea is to find a way to support your art, not to try and find a way to get your art to support you. And then it creates better art if you're thinking of how can I let the art be the art and build my life around it to give it as much space to be what it needs to be. So that was the first thought I had in what you were saying then. It's funny, your hustle on the streets is kind of reminiscent to something that I've been doing lately. I read this article a couple of times now. It's called Do Things That Don't Scale by Paul Graham. He's if you know who Paul Graham is, he's a big investor. And basically the concept is he's a I think he's one of the founders of Y Combinator potentially. But basically in 2013 he works in tech, and he basically did this whole article that's now extremely famous. It basically says all of these companies that you see at scale did not start at scale. They started, Airbnb started with these guys going to people's houses and knocking on doors and saying, can I take photos of your apartment to put it up, etc. And I read that recently, and I thought to myself, maybe I can apply this to the podcast. And so recently, instead of saying, I run a podcast, check it out sometime, I've been doing exactly what you suggested, which was, I run a podcast, get your Spotify up. And I'll put it in. There you go. It's so much better. And
I'll tell you something, man. You have to be a little bit shameless. If you're totally independent and you are a creative or you are an entrepreneur or you're both of them, you have to be a little bit shameless. You have to be audacious. You have to be willing to put your freaking name on a hat or on a T-shirt and print up flyers with your face on them and tell people directly, open up your Spotify, type in, right? Like type in my name, because number one, no one else is going to advertise for you, right? Like you don't have a PR company. You're not on some big organization that's putting millions of pounds or dollars into your campaign. No, it's just you. And if you don't believe in yourself to the degree to do that, why should anyone else give a crap? Why should anyone else believe in you? If you're not going to put yourself out there and have that faith and confidence, then you maybe shouldn't be doing it. Or if you really struggle just because of your personality type, then at a minimum, you at least need to hire someone else or a few other people to do that for you. But that's going to cost you money.
Yeah, definitely. I've thought of something that popped into my mind randomly recently. My friend years ago on Facebook got a DM from Kim Kardashian just saying hello, because at that point in time, she must have been early on Facebook, and she was, trying to build her audience and build herself. We've still got a screenshot of that, and look how it turned out. Look at her life now; it's completely different. But she, at some point, was either her or somebody else was randomly DMing early 20s guys in Australia. It's like it's odd, but it works, and it's important. There's a point you made how you need to push through the shame and push through that fear of rejection. Do you have any comments around how to do that effectively, while also some people's whole image and their whole brand positioning is that nonchalant, not trying too hard, super cool space? Have you noticed any good techniques around pushing past that, lack of going out and selling yourself while also trying to maintain a cool image?
Well, sure. I think the first thing to say is that the biggest fear in the world, maybe fear of death is the top. I'm not sure if fear of death is actually the number one fear amongst human beings. Certainly the fear of judgment by other people rivals the fear of death.
It's worse than death. What are you talking about?
It's the reason why, there we go, right? It's the reason why the majority of adults have something called glossophobia, which is fear of public speaking. And it's not that most people are actually afraid of speaking. Obviously, we all do it all the time. And people aren't afraid of being in public. But what people are afraid of is being made to look silly in front of other people, or being judged, or being criticized, having people look at you the weird way, leave a negative comment, make a snide remark, all of that. It's incredible just how much, Lord knows how many billions of people's dreams have been crushed because of this fear. How many dreams have never even gotten off the ground because people are so afraid of judgment or negative feedback or something not going perfectly how they imagine in their head. So the first thing I think is the first thing I want to say is, like, most people don't give a crap about you. Most people aren't thinking about you. Most people aren't paying attention about you. It's actually extraordinarily narcissistic for someone to not want to kind of do something in the public because they're so afraid of judgment. It's like, bro, stop being solipsistic, man. Like, no one even gives a crap. Like, people aren't walking around all day thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about all the things that they have to do. Well, go to any city, walk down any street. Like, people might see you, but they're not thinking about you. They're certainly not judging you unless you're doing something like extreme, right? Most people are in their own heads all day long. And so I think that people psych themselves out because they're so worried about being judged and being criticized predominantly by people who they don't know, who don't care about them, who aren't even aware of them, don't even know their names. You see, this is even truer online. We're not even talking all the face-to-face interactions here. You've got people who are, I want to start a YouTube channel, but they're afraid to start a YouTube channel. They're afraid to create a social media account. They're afraid to start a podcast. They're not they're not afraid of starting a podcast. They're afraid that no one's going to watch, or afraid that people are going to watch.
What does that tie into? Yeah, where does that go in their head?
Exactly. So once you frame it that way, it becomes a lot easier to get out of your own head and to stop blocking yourself and to just do the thing. The next thing I'd say is to enjoy the process. Like, not everyone is built and designed for this. Not everyone is a creative. Most people are not supposed to be entrepreneurs. And so get in where you fit in. Be honest with yourself and know, okay, is this something I really want to do and I'm capable of doing? And then once you do it, enjoy the process. So, I told you, I spent well over a decade, not all full time, but a lot of it full time, selling my CDs predominantly on the streets, and then eventually in pop-up shops in shopping centers in the UK. And I had good days. I had bad days. I had times where I was super hype and things were going really well. I had days which were dark and depressing, and I'm up in freaking Glasgow, 400 miles from home. It's cold, it's raining, and I'm standing on the street on a Monday trying to sell my CDs to strangers, questioning what I'm doing with my life, questioning why I've wasted my Oxford degree and quit my nice corporate job to be out here getting no sales and just wasting my time and my money while freezing my butt off doing this.
What answer did you find, out of curiosity?
Adam, I always knew why I was doing what I was doing. One thing I'm good at, and maybe this is one of my superpowers, is I'm very good at long-term thinking and long-term mission. So sometimes people ask me now, I'm 38 years old right now, right? And sometimes people ask me, Zuby, when you were selling your CDs on the street in 2006, or when you quit your job in 2011, did you think you'd be doing what you're doing now? Did you think it would go this far? Did you think you'd have millions of followers and you'd be connected to Elon Musk and Rogan and be all whatever, whoever I'm meeting, whatever people? And I'm like, yeah, I did. When I was standing on the street selling my CDs in England, and like, I didn't know it would happen exactly this way, but I knew that I would reach millions of people. I knew that one day millions of people around the world would give a crap about what I'm doing and what I have to say. It didn't take the exact route because I thought it was going to predominantly just come through my music, and it came through other things, with the music being a relatively smaller part of that now. But yeah, I always knew I knew it was going to happen. I always had like a level of, I would say I have a level of self-belief and confidence that someone who doesn't know me or understand me might think that I'm either arrogant or delusional. I'm not an arrogant person at all. I don't consider myself above other people. I don't consider myself better than other people. In fact, I believe that everybody is superior to me in some way. And that's how I'm always learning. I assume that every single person on this planet, whether they're older than me, younger than me, have more money, less money, whatever, everybody has something that they can teach me. And I believe we're all made in the image of God, and we are all ultimately created equal in terms of moral and human value. So, however, I don't really do the false modesty thing. Like if I'm good at something and someone is like, "Oh, are you good at?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good." If I'm crap at something, I'll say I'm rubbish at it as well, right? But I've just always I've had that in me for a really long time. I don't know if it's just a personality trait or something in my upbringing, but I'm just good at seeing the future to some extent, especially when I have some control over it. There's a lot of things in the world we don't have control over, but
yeah, you have control over yourself, though.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one more thing, Adam, is I don't tend to start something unless I'm confident I can do it for at least 10 years. So if I'm going to do any serious endeavor, when I started my podcast in 2019, I had to think long and hard about it. I was like, I had to think, am I willing to commit to this for at least a decade? Am I willing to do a podcast every single week for minimum 10 years? Because I'm not going to just start a podcast and then after 10 episodes, I quit. After 50 episodes, I quit. After 200 episodes, it's like, nope, I'm going to make it to episode 1,000. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I had to think long and hard, because sometimes I run something through a filter and I'm like, nah, you know what? I don't want this bad enough that I'm willing to spend 10 years on it. But when it came to sort of the main aspects of my career with all these decisions, it was like, all right, I'm willing to commit minimum 10 years. I remember I quit my job. I used to be a management consultant, 2008 to 2011.
At Accenture, right?
Yep. I don't normally say the name of the company, but yeah, Accenture.
Oh shit! I can.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No, it's fine. It's not like secret knowledge or something.
Yeah.
And I remember when I quit my job in 2011, and a lot of my colleagues and people I worked with and whatever, and even people who I didn't work with, a lot of people were like, "Oh, like how long are you? How long are you going to give it?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, like the music thing, the entrepreneur thing, like how much time you're going to give it, like 1 year, 2 years, whatever. I was like, I'm done. I was like, you don't get it. You don't get it. Like, I'm not coming back. I'm done. And I'm going to be successful. I'm 2012, 2013, I'll tell you something, Adam. The first year, I became self-employed in 2011. The first year that I made more money than I used to make in my old job was 2019.
Wow.
It took me 8 years to get to an annual salary above what I used to make when I was in my early 20s. So there's people who think, oh, like you got into music, you became a musician to, you wanted to be a rapper to make money, I was like, bro, like I was making more money in my old job with a lot less effort and without freezing my butt off and talking to hundreds of thousands of strangers. So it wasn't that, but I knew in that job, there was no way I could positively impact millions of people from that desk job. It wasn't going to happen. And so, Man, I'm weaving through a lot of different thoughts here, but my sort of core point is there are some things in this world where it's really up to you. And sometimes success is simply a decision. It's not one decision, it's a series of decisions and habits. Let's say you've got somebody who is obese. You've got a man who weighs 300 pounds. This guy's now 50 kilos overweight, whatever it is. That person, it is 100% in their control to get down to a healthy body weight. So you could have two people, you could have two people, man A and man B. They're both 300 pounds. They're both the same amount overweight, whatever. Neither of them has worked out. They both eat rubbish all day long. And you can have one guy who has an external locus of control. And he's that one who's like, I've tried everything. I'm going to try. Diets don't work. My genetics are bad. I don't have time to exercise. I can't go to the gym, blah, blah, right? He's got every excuse in the book. And people are sympathizing with him. Well, it's okay to be fat, or it's so difficult. Yeah, you're right. Diets don't work. And we all get fat as we get old. Whatever. All these comforting lies. And you can have the other guy and he's just like, I will lose 100 pounds. And he can say that confidently because it is totally in his control. It's completely in his control. If he knows, okay, I need to change my diet. I'm going to start exercising on top of that. I'm going to drink more water, and I'm going to just repeat this. I'm going to just stay in a calorie deficit for as long as it takes to lose that 100 pounds. If he does it and he sticks to that program, and every day he's in a caloric deficit, via the law of thermodynamics, he will lose that 100 pounds over the course of time. And it's totally up to him, barring some, a horrible accident or illness or something like that, like some freak situation. It's totally up to him.
Even then, I've heard some crazy stories.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's still on him, right? And so if he says that, someone might be like, oh, wow, he's confident. Someone else might be like, oh, he's delusional, or he's it's like, no, if it's in your control, then it's in your control. And there are many things that are not. But I do believe that let me not extend this to all humanity, but I will say that, and some people might not like this, but I don't care. I think that if you live in an economically developed country, let's say you live in any Western country, it could be the UK, it could be Canada, Australia, certainly the USA. Regardless of what socioeconomic group you are born into, or your gender, or your ethnicity, or whatever, like you don't choose what you're born into, 100%, right? You don't choose that. But over the course of your lifetime, over the course of decades, I'd say that some degree of success is a choice. Whether you sink or swim, or you succeed or fail. And when I say this, when I say success, I don't mean you have to become a billionaire, or you have to have become a freaking NBA star or something, right? Like when I say success, let's say like doing something that you don't hate, earning a decent income and being able to survive and look after, right? Like over the course of certainly of decades, that's ultimately up to you. If you're a 20-year-old and you don't have stuff figured out and you're broke and you're out of shape, like that's normal. Okay. But by the time you're 30, there's fewer excuses. By the time that you're 40, there's even fewer excuses. By the time you're 50, it's like, all right, bro, like you can't be talking about how the thing
what
that
have you
happened
been
to you
doing
when
this
you were,
whole time?
Yeah, right. Like I understand you had a bad childhood, and something bad happened to you when you were 7 years old. But like you're 47 now. You've had some time to work these things out. Now I'm aware there are billions of people in this world who grew up in places where the ceiling is just very low. And if you're not able to get out of those environments and go to a better city or a better country or something like that, there really is just a ceiling, right? If you're just born in, I don't know, you're born in some village in Somalia and everyone you know is just around there, and you're born into abject poverty and you're not able to get to a better environment, there's going to be a massive cap on your success. Even in those situations, though, you can still achieve some relative success, right? So you might not be successful by Western standards in terms of money or economy or whatever, but in terms of being able to live a good life and being able to provide and being able to look after your health and ideally look after people in your family and so on, you can still do that. And people have been doing this for thousands of years, billions of people in all sorts of different situations. So when I speak of success here, I'm talking about it relatively. I'm talking about it somewhat subjectively, but you could say there's some objective measures to it as well. So I don't know. I don't think that we are individual agents with free will, and I'll tell you, man, nothing blocks people like themselves.
Yeah.
People really block themselves and set so many false barriers and limitations on themselves, which are not really imposed by society. They're just things that are in people's heads, and they stop and they quit when they don't need to, when nothing is forcing them to. It takes a lot to master your own mind. That's why I talk a lot about like just mindset, because if you just, look, and everything I say, by the way, last thing I'll say before, everything I'm saying here is assuming people want to strive and achieve something.
Yeah.
If you're someone who is just like quite apathetic and you're just like, meh, I'm okay with just how things are, cool, no problem. God bless you. Everything I'm saying is for people who complain. Everyone who is not in the situation they want to be in and who wants this aspect or that aspect of their life to be better, which is most people. Like most people like complaining. It's just like, okay, cool. You can complain a bit and you can vent, but ultimately, what are you going to do about it? Right? You're not going to complain. You're not going to complain yourself into a high-paying job. You're not going to complain yourself into a successful business. You're not going to complain yourself into
lately,
shape.
that's been a thing that's been working, but I don't know how much longer it's going to work for.
Yeah, maybe so.
I think that's the tail end of that. But I have a good point that you made a very, very good point, where the difference between internal and external locuses of control, I think and I want to move into a bit more of kind of the culture of mainly the Western world right now with you, because I know you have a lot of thoughts and comments around this, and there's a lot of deep threads that we can go down here. But it seems that there's a significant externalization of problems to others, that everything else is someone else's problem, and that has become an accepted notion in Western society. And personally, I think it's extremely destructive to the fabric of the society, because if everyone's blaming everyone else and dragging everybody else down, you don't have the outliers that carry society forward. So what are your thoughts around this issue, especially with the UK and the US? And, I can make some comments around Australia as well, because I think a lot of them are quite similar.
Just quickly though, I love doing this podcast. If it's positively impacted you in some way and you would like to support us, please subscribe. By subscribing, it allows us to build a much bigger base of listeners, which results in better guests, better production, and a better show overall. Alternatively, please take a look at the affiliate links of the products that I use and love in the comments below, and consider purchasing using those links. They'll give you a discount, and they'll also provide the podcast a small kickback. These are two very easy ways for you to support us as we continue to grow the podcast that we absolutely love doing. Thank you for your support, and now back to the episode.
It's an excellent question. I think the most important thing to say first is that this is not a new problem. This is just an element of human nature. It's very much in our nature to blame other things, other people, other entities when things go wrong. We all do it. We all do it, right? There's no exceptions. Let's say that you've got some event you're supposed to be at tomorrow, or a meeting, and you're 15 minutes late, or you're even 5 minutes late. You're not going to say, sorry, I'm late because I didn't leave the house as early as I should have. Nobody says that. Have you ever heard anyone say that? I'm late because I just left the house too late. No, you were late because of traffic, or because you got held up in this, or no, it's because you left the house too late. And we all do this, right? This is my point, right? We all do it, right? And no one's going to be like, yeah, I'm just late because I'm just late. Like, my time management I spent too much time in the shower or faffing around watching YouTube videos. I was scrolling through Twitter, and like nobody says that, right? It's natural.
Maybe
to
we
say
should
that,
start. Maybe we should take some personal ownership.
Yeah, it would be more honest. It would be more honest because in 99% of those situations, there's something that you could have done to have changed that situation. Yes, okay, once in a while there is, okay, boom, there was actually an accident on the motorway, or I was leaving the house and my child got sick and I had to, right? Okay, that's more valid. But yeah, we all do it. And so I think it happens at different scales. I think what is relatively new is I think the things that we are complaining about are lesser problems than most people around the world and most people all throughout history dealt with. So I think we've gone from macroaggressions to microaggressions, right? We've gone from
what's an example of that?
Literally, are you aware of the concept of microaggressions?
Yeah. But just so someone can understand specifically.
Sure. So, okay. Well, the concept of a microaggression is, it's a bit of a sort of woke progressive idea of when someone says something or does something that is somehow that could be perceived as bigoted, whether that is racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever. And they didn't, it's not direct, it's kind of indirect, and subjectively it could be perceived of that way, right? So say, for example, if you ask me where I'm from, well, that in itself, there are people who could be like, oh, how dare you, right? How dare you ask a black person where he's from, right? Or, certainly it could be, maybe you ask me where I'm from and I say, oh, I'm from England. And then you might be like, oh, where's your, the one that really triggers people is where are you really from? Or,
I've said
it could
that
be like,
so many times.
Okay,
is that actually a triggering thing? I didn't know that was a thing.
To some people, yes, absolutely. Wow. That's considered a microaggression.
Wow. I'm just curious. It's like,
there's people who think there's people who think holding the door open for a woman is a microaggression, right? Because you're suggesting that she's not strong or independent enough to hold the door for herself.
That's such a wild comment to make, isn't it? Like, why would people, how have we got to this point?
Yeah, well, this
just being nice and curious.
I'll tell you how we've gotten to this point, Adam, is we've gotten to this point because as far as human history is concerned, and as far as even the current world is concerned, we are in the top 1% of people who have ever walked the face of this earth in terms of ease of survivability and comfort. All of our ancestors, our grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, if they could see the world that we're living in now, compared to the hardship that they had to go through, famine, drought, war, disease, like, bro, I'll tell you how real this is. And again, I'm not trying to be insensitive here, but we all remember the 2020 to 2022 period, right? The so-called global pandemic. Okay. So I think I am being statistically correct when I say that across the general population, the mortality rate, if you did contract that particular illness, was under 0.1%. Okay, so not zero.
Where did that come from? I haven't heard any of this before.
Sorry, wait. What's your question?
So you said the mortality rate was 0.1%. Where does that come from? I've never heard that before.
Of COVID. That was the mortality rate.
I've always heard really. So contraction to actual well, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
The probability of you dying if you get COVID is under 0.1%.
Yeah.
Okay,
that makes more sense.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Okay. So let's say it is 0.1%, meaning if 1,000 people get it, one of them will pass away. This is, and most of them will be elderly and so on, right? It's someone of your age and health. It's probably like 0.0001%. But I'm just saying across the general population, it's, let's say it's 0.1%. My simple point is, okay, you remember how for 3 years, how the world reacted to that for a 2.5 to 3 year period.
Yeah, okay. I'm scarred.
Yeah, me too, but not from the virus, right? From the reaction.
No, God no.
My simple point is, if you look back at historical pandemics and disease outbreaks, and you look at how murderously destructive some of those things were, like they've had plagues where it was taking out like 20-30% of the whole population is being wiped out by a freaking plague. Okay. And yes, they take precautions, but they're still carrying on, and they're still having babies, and they're still working, and they're still like getting on with things. This is literally like 300 times more dangerous, 500 times more dangerous than anything we've dealt with. And then on top of that, you can add war, you can add famine, all of these things. My point is that just survival as a human being for most of history has been really difficult, right? You've probably heard that if you go back just a couple centuries ago, the life expectancy was around 40. Okay. And it wasn't because people get this confused. People think like people were just getting to 40 and dropping dead. It wasn't predominantly that. It was just like so many people weren't even making it to 2 years old, right? People would have.
Yeah, it was a very high infant mortality, right?
Yes. People would have 8 children hoping that 3 or 4 of them survive, right? And this is all around the world. Like most of human history, this is just how it's been. Now, bro, like look at the world we're living in. Look at what we're doing right now. This would be considered witchcraft from, by people even 20 years ago. And so it's never been easier. There are a lot of modern day challenges and struggles, and I talk about them sometimes. But in terms of just like being able to survive, it's never been easier. Obesity is now a greater threat. Obesity is now a bigger killer than starvation worldwide. Think about that.
Yeah.
This is the
diseases
first,
of excess.
Dude,
that's
this is
the
the
challenge.
Exactly. This is the first time. Think of it. This is the first time in all human history where obesity has been a bigger problem than starvation. All of human history, it was like people didn't have enough to eat. We don't have enough calories. People are like starving. And now it's like there's too much food. People are eating too much. People are consuming so much that they're shortening their lifespan. So there's so many problems of excess. There's problems of excess when it comes to mating behavior, when it comes to eating, when it comes to drinking, when it comes to substances, when it comes to like, there's just so much excess and also so much optionality. That's another thing that's crazy, right? We're very much wired as, particularly as Westerners, to be really interested in like freedom and liberty and rights and, ability to do things. And all of that is important. But what's fascinating is having infinite options. Number one, is not inherently a good thing. And also it doesn't make people happy. If you go to a restaurant and there's 10 things on the menu, there's a high chance that you're going to be like satisfied with what you ordered, and you're going to think that you got the right thing. And it's also going to be quite easy for you to order. If I go and I give you a menu with 200 different options, is that better for you? No. Right? No, at every stage, it's gonna be harder for you to make a decision. It's going to be harder for you to it's going to be harder for you to be happy with the decision that you made. You're going to be looking at everyone else's plates and meals. Oh man, I should have ordered that. I should have got that or whatever. So we like to think that just having this sort of like ability to do everything and anything that we want and consume whatever we want will sort of make us happier. But the truth is that that's not happening. The proof is kind of in the pudding at this stage. So long story, to bring this round to the original thing you were asking, I think we've just got into this position because we're just so sort of fat and happy and entitled, and life is almost too easy. Life has become sort of too easy to the point that we can even afford to spend. Bro, we've been debating for 10 freaking years at this point whether men can get pregnant and how many genders there are and about pronouns and stuff. Prior to even 2014, people were like, that's a bunch of nonsense. Like we don't have time for these conversations. And we're just here navel gazing for the last 10 years. And maybe the worst part of it all is we do actually still have problems that we should be solving, but so much time and energy and intellect and money is being wasted on a lot of nonsense the big stuff is going unchecked. And I think that's the part that I find quite frustrating with it all.
Well, you made a lot of interesting points there, and I do want to move into something relevant to this, which is the US election and the politics of Western society mainly, because you've got England seems extremely liberal right now. Okay, nice. You've swapped out the hat. Nice. So the England seems like, from an outsider's perspective, England seems like it's become extremely liberal and the actual fundamentals of the society are falling apart. Australia is doing the same thing. Canada is doing the same thing. America was on that path until this election. So, you've got an extremely divisive campaign. Both parties are saying it's going to be the end of it all if they don't win, but then it finishes and it's like, okay, get them next year. Like what? There's a ton of extreme rhetoric. There was like the assassination. It's been fucking crazy. Like I've been sitting here as an Australian going like, wow, this is, I'm in New York. I'm like, this is really, really interesting. I tell my kids in 40 years' time that I was in the epicenter of the US during this whole thing. But what I found really interesting, and I'd love to get your thoughts on, is there's all this extremity, but then there is a quiet majority that made their views very clear this election in the US, with the Republicans who are somewhat, more conservative, but it's quite a centrist party these days. They made their views clear by the winning of the popular vote, the Electoral College, and although not like related specifically to voting, now the Supreme Court is looking like it's going to be Republican controlled. So the question is somewhat nuanced because we tie into COVID. I myself had the experience of not being aligned with what the narrative was being put forward at the time, and not being able to understand why it felt off, and then getting shamed into decisions. Like, I got vaccinated, and it was one of my biggest regrets I had because I didn't need to. And my logic of it was, I'm in the lowest cohort of, potentially getting sick from COVID. I'm in the highest cohort of potentially getting sick from the vaccine. I am extremely healthy and health conscious and have spent a lot of time and energy on this. But if I don't do this, I'm ostracized by my friends. I'm ostracized by my family. I'm ostracized by my industry, which was at the time the music industry, doing events and festivals. And that pressure, that social pressure, was the catalyst to do it. And then I regret that. Now, it's clear as day by the way that the US has led with this election that there is a quiet majority of people that are reasonable, that are moderate, that are thoughtful and caring, but they get labeled as racist or bigots or misogynists when they don't agree with like an intensely far left liberal ideology. So how would you find, from your view of this world, you're a black man, you've lived in an Arab country, you're now in the UK. You've got a few different.
I'm not in the UK now.
Sorry,
I'm in Dubai.
You were in the UK. You're now in Dubai. How would, based off your understanding of all of this, it's a very wide question. How would these people navigate this environment without effectively alienating those around them when possible?
Sorry, you're
so
talking about
question.
You're worried about who alienating who?
The quiet majority getting alienated by their friends, their peers, their co-workers because of how divisive it is, but they just want to live their life and they want to make, they want to make certain decisions, but they feel like they get attacked by the extremities.
I feel like it comes back to something I answered earlier, and you kind of have to not give a crap. I'm dead serious. If somebody is going to ostracize you, whether that's for not taking a jab or for voting for a different person to them or having slightly different beliefs on something, if they want to kick you out of their life for that reason, They don't belong in your life. And I am absolutely opposed to kicking out friends, family members, or even just being harsh or nasty to people because they have different beliefs to you. I would not do such a thing. And I don't do such a thing. But if someone wants to treat you that way, then they don't truly respect you. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, because I hear people say, oh, I was friends with this person for all this time, and then they found out I voted Trump, and, they kicked me out of their life, and we haven't spoken since, or this. And I'm like, that person never respected you. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you. Do you know how many friends or family members I've lost or who have ostracized me over the past 6 years over all the things I've said? And I'm pretty vocal. I'm pretty public. I'm pretty out there. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many friends I've lost over all of it?
I don't know. How many?
0.
Okay.
0. Okay. And we don't all agree on all this stuff. All right. I don't agree with, my family members would not be pleased by me even owning this. Okay. But you know what? They love me and they respect me. So, and we're all emotionally mature enough to be able to have those conversations. So if people are incapable of that and they want to, if someone doesn't want you in their life, why are you trying to appease them anyway? Honestly, like, why are you trying to appease them? Like, why are you going to be, oh, this person wants to, delete me from their life because I voted Republican. I'm like, let them go. That's on them. Hopefully they'll be wise enough, given enough time, to realize what a stupid thing to do that is, and to cut off a relationship and cut off someone who likes and cares about you and who you have a history with because of something like voting. Let's just invert it for a minute. Let's invert that for a minute. Okay. Let's invert both of these things. Okay. Let's go back to 2021 or 2022. Can you imagine ostracizing someone because they took the jab?
Not at all.
Right? You've got a friend, and your friend is like, maybe you don't want to take the jab and they do, or a family member, and you're like, oh, you know what? Like, that's not for me. I don't think I need it, but okay, and you're like when you invert it, it's insane. You meet someone who voted for Democrat, you met someone who voted for Clinton or voted for Biden or voted for Kamala Harris, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's it. We can't be friends. We can't talk anymore. You voted for Kamala Harris. Like, what? Like, when I flip it, like, I can't even imagine this. And there's a word that you used, and I actually want to kind of correct you, because the people who think like this are not liberal. And I think that word actually needs to be, I'm very careful about using language properly. And you cannot call people who behave like this liberal, because it's completely illiberal. It's authoritarian. There's nothing liberal about wanting to force an injection into people's arms against their will. There's nothing liberal about being against free speech. There's nothing liberal about ostracizing family members and friends because they have a differing political belief to you or they vote differently. Like, there's 8 billion people in this world, and we all need to be able to, at a minimum, get on with each other so that we don't tear each other to pieces. So if someone is not capable of doing that, then they need to have a look in the mirror, right? They need to stop pointing the finger everywhere else, and they need to have a think about themselves. They also need to analyze their own worldview, because, okay, wake up now, you're in the minority. Okay. So if your answer is just, oh, most of the people in America are just racist, that's how Trump won. It's like, really? So after the past 10 years, your analysis of this whole situation is that half the country is just a bunch of racist bigots. Like, do you not have any insight? Do you not do any self-reflection? So, I would say, like, number one, like, look, that's, if people are going to go, let them go. But, that's them who need to do the work. That's not on me. That's not on you. That's not on anyone. I say that especially at this point, because, the first Trump election and election campaign, it was 8 to 9 years ago at this point.
You learn a lot in 8 years.
Yeah. Like, people have had 8 years to work this out. So if you are still kind of running that same script from 2015, 2016, I'm just like, bro, like, that's your bad. You have to update your mental software. Otherwise, you're just not going to understand the world or anybody in it.
Yeah, I guess maybe at this point in time there just needs to be an acceptance of what it is, and letting people go, I think, is probably the best way to approach it. But respectfully, just like, okay, that's
dude,
for you.
It's
and
up to you. Look. There's many people I love in this world. If one of my friends or someone who I thought was a friend is just like, yeah, I'm just cutting you off because I don't like your political beliefs, or I don't like that you shook hands with this person, or you did a podcast with that person, or whatever. I would try to engage a conversation to find out where they're coming from. But if they're really just like, nope, I'm just cutting you off and blocking you and deleting your number, I'd be like, all right, bye. Like, your loss. I'm freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, no, seriously, like, I'm not trying to be cocky here. I'd just be like, okay, well, that was stupid. Right? Why would you just burn? Why would you just burn a bridge with someone who has been good to you and who likes you and who like? Gosh, I have so many friends who, like, we have all sorts of discussions and debates and arguments about all sorts of topics. Many of them more important than politics. But man, like, those are people that I love. Like, the idea of, it doesn't even sort of compute in my brain that I would let a friend go or ostracize a family member over, gosh, like, it would take a lot for that, man. It would take some real heinous, really, really heinous behavior. That
says a lot. That says a lot on how this has been turned into such a flurry of intense emotions. Because it's, to some people, it probably is heinous behavior, which makes no sense in my brain.
But it's not. This is my point. Is that's their fault.
Yeah,
that is their fault. If these people, if they genuinely don't get it, look, it doesn't take that much empathy and tolerance, funnily enough, and just intellectual curiosity to understand how and why people think the way that they do. Okay. Do you know what it would be like? It would be like, imagine if me at 38 years old, okay, I believe in God. I'm a Christian. And imagine I meet someone who's an atheist. And they're like, no, I don't believe in God. I don't believe God's real. I just think like it's all fake and made, right? Like, wouldn't it be my bad if I had never even sort of like if I couldn't even fathom how that person thought that way? Isn't that my fault? Right? Like, I believe in God, and I've always believed in God, but I don't find it particularly difficult to understand that not everybody does, and to understand why not everybody does. And then to have a basic level of empathy and human decency that even if they think I'm wrong and I think they're wrong, we can still like each other and we can still have a conversation and a relationship or so on, right? Like, you could argue that there is nothing more important than that. Right? You could argue that there is
nothing more important than that.
Yeah. You could say like that is the most important thing. And even on that, I'm like, you know what? I can think of a world where I grew up in a different way and so on and so forth. Like, I don't find it difficult to understand why people have different religious beliefs or no religious beliefs, or why people think, like, I don't find it hard to understand why somebody, I tend to be more conservative on most issues, but I don't find it like extraordinarily impossible to understand how somebody could be more liberal or more progressive or more left wing. Like, I can make those arguments myself. I might not think it's the right argument, but I understand the position. And if I didn't, I'd be like, hey, why don't I talk to somebody? Right. So if I were someone who was super confused, let's say I'm like a lifelong Democrat, lefty liberal, and I'm like confused, man, like Trump has run 3 times and he's won twice. Like, how does he keep winning? I'd be like, okay, there's over 70 million people in my own country who voted for him. Why don't I talk to one of them? Right? So that brother of yours or friend of yours or whatever who voted the way you don't understand, why don't you talk to them? Why don't you speak to them instead of going, okay, well, I'm just cutting you off. I'm going to stick my fingers in my ears and like scream. just be like, okay, why don't we have a conversation? That's what I would do, because there's things that I have a different perspective. If someone has told me that, I'd be like, do you know what? If I'm not American, so it's kind of moot. But if I were, okay, I'll give you an example. In 2016, there was the Brexit vote in the UK. Okay. I personally voted Remain. There's a lot of people who assume I would be a Leave voter because I seem more ideologically on that side. And ideologically I am in a way, but I won't go into all the details. Anyway, let's say I wasn't surprised by the Leave vote at all, because I know tons of people who voted for it and I was speaking to them all the way through. But let's just say that I voted Remain and everyone I knew voted Remain. Let's hypothetically, if that happened and then I woke up in the morning and I saw that Leave won and I was just like blown away and confused by it, I would be intellectually curious. If someone told me, yeah, I voted Leave, I'd be like, why? What was your reasoning? What was your thinking? What was your logic behind it? And then even if we disagree, I at least understand their perspective. I would like to think on pretty much any major contentious issue, I can at least understand the other side. Even when it comes to like stupid arguments like abolish the police or open borders. I think these are like extreme and dumb policies, but I can understand the thinking and rationale for them. Even if I think it's a terrible idea, I can understand the argument that somebody would make, because I've had those conversations and I've looked into it. And sometimes I've even read books trying to understand these different perspectives. So yeah, it comes down to intellectual honesty, man. And it's not a one-way thing. I do think it's funny that people who call themselves liberals have become far less liberal and far less tolerant than people who are generally more right-wing or conservative. So there's a funny irony to it all. But I
have noticed that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Australia, I noticed this going down a similar direction. It still is. It hasn't turned around. It may be through America's decision-making, it'll give freedom to a lot of the other Commonwealth countries to now go, actually, you know what? I've not liked this. and I can finally speak about it. But I had this idea of starting just an independent party called the Common Sense Party, because I just felt like it was completely missed. And it seems as though, from what I'm hearing, especially now on X, there's a lot more common sense coming back into these conversations. It's like they had to get, the Democrats this time had to get like their ass handed to them so badly that a lot of them are now going, oh, you know what? How did we get here? Well, fuck. Look, on that note, I'm conscious. There's one last comment I want to make before we dig into a couple of final questions. I'll get out of your hair. But the most important part, I think, about all of this are bringing people back together, because that is the most important thing here. Being able to get along and being able to synthesize ideas and information from people with completely different worldviews to you to get to the best answer possible. It comes from curiosity and an openness to understand, not attacking. You will never get anywhere attacking anybody, and we will never make good decisions if we think we are always right and can't synthesize the information around us. So I'm liking that we are now able to begin to have actual conversations, and this whole cancel culture is getting completely thrown out now. And there's a lot of other, genuine, thoughtful discussions happening. So I think we are on the right track again. I think it is a pendulum that swings, but it's going to take a little bit more time, and hopefully we don't go to war in the meantime. So that's my current take. But look, just to round it up a little bit, I've got a couple of questions about that, just to get an understanding of just some little moments in your life. So what's the biggest thing over the last 2 years that you've changed your mind on?
I'll give you the one that's on my head and in my heart, which is that most people can switch to authoritarianism far more quickly and aggressively than we would like to believe.
Yeah.
My overall perception on humanity and how much they really care about freedom and decency was definitely severely damaged by that whole 2020 to the whole period. I call it the scamdemic, that whole era. And it wasn't just one country or one place. Like it was, yeah. So just seeing that, I was somewhat already aware of it, but it just made it so real. So I've lost some of my faith in humanity. Sadly, I hate to say that because I'm such a positive, optimistic person, but I'd say my overall view of humanity has actually decreased. That doesn't mean I'm a nihilist or I don't like human beings at all. I love human beings, but I remember that time too well, and it was most people that went with it.
I think, and maybe this is me being an optimist, but I think probably, I think you would be pleasantly surprised with how people would rally if something like that were to happen again. I just don't think, fool me once.
Do you know what I think? I think you're right. I think you're right for maybe the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
But I think it could happen again. Say 12 years from now, I think it could happen again, and most people would fall right in line again. The same people who stuck up last time will stick up again. And maybe there will be like an extra 10%, but if the level of fear is sufficiently high, people will fall straight in line again. It just takes the fear to be triggered. And then all the social pressure, even, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to criticize you because I do understand and empathize. I sympathize. But even like, if you think of what pressured you said you did not want the shot, but you ended up getting it because of the pressure, right? The social pressure, the cultural pressure. Yeah. So that's how it operates. Like fear is just, man, fear is such a powerful emotion. And then when it's combined with like the social pressure, especially when it's framed in a way that is, I'll tell you what was so sinister about it, because it was all framed under the banner of safety and like protecting other people, right? So
supporting,
it wasn't like people were trying to get you to do something that's fundamentally evil. That's easier to stand against. If someone is like, hey, I want you to like, you know, kick this puppy or something worse, right? Like even if 100 people are pressuring you to do it, it's easier to stand against because it's like evil. But if it's like, hey, if you don't do this, you're putting other people at risk, or you're the reason why we're never going to get out of lockdown, or we're going to now put pressure on your job. We're going to put pressure on your money. We're going to put like when it gets like that, then it's very hard to stand against. And I understand this, and it's not we've seen this many times throughout history, and I think we'd like to think that we've kind of evolved and changed in that degree, but I have a general belief that pretty much everything that's happened in history could happen again under the right circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And it probably will happen again. It's just a matter of the pendulum swinging. But it's this idea of, you know, the saying that, what's the saying? It's like strong men make good times make weak men make bad times make strong men. And it's just that pendulum. Yeah, I think we have a time limit on it, but let's hopefully not have to use it. So maybe that's a good thing. Yeah. So what's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for you?
Wow.
Just on a lighter note.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to be so dark here at all. I'm really not. I was just thinking, I'm just answering honestly. What's the kindest thing that anybody has done for me? I'm going to be a bit generic here, but I'm just going to say my parents.
You can't say your mom and dad. Yeah, you can't say it. That's cheating.
Can't say it. No, that's cheating. Okay. If I can't say my parents.
Unless there's a very specific moment in time that is coming to you from an interaction with one of your parents or both, then I'll accept that as an answer.
Gosh, I don't know. I'm actually trying to. That's such a good question. I've never really thought about it. People, I've experienced a lot of kindness in my life. I'm just trying to think of something that like really stands out. Man, I don't know. I almost never, that's almost never my answer to a question of this sort, but I don't know.
Maybe it's, and you journal, right?
No.
Well, maybe today's the day where you go, tonight you go and sit down and you go, what are the kindest things anyone's ever done for me? And send me a text on what you end up landing on. Yeah. I'd be very curious. Yeah. Cool, man.
Yeah, awesome. I need to think about it more.
That's okay. And if you could only recommend one book, podcast, experience for somebody to read or do for their whole lifetime, they can only do one thing that's going to have the most impact in their life today, what would it be? One discrete thing.
One, and they only do it once?
They can do it as many, let's just, I don't know. It's you can do it as many times as you want, but it has to be one thing that's going to move the needle the most. Ideally discrete.
Get into strength training.
It's a good one.
I'll tell you another one is if you've never left your country, then travel somewhere and spend a good amount of time somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You learn a lot about yourself and that your worldview is not quite the only worldview that's out there. That's a big one, right? And then you go to another country and it's completely different again. And you think, oh, shit. All right.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, how did I get to this worldview? And then you think, oh, how did they get to this worldview? And then that empathy that we were talking about begins to develop because you realize you're not so smart.
Yeah. You only see the perspective from where you're standing.
Yeah, exactly. Zuby, thank you for coming on the podcast. Is there anything that you're excited about at the moment you'd like to let the listeners in on?
I'm excited about my next book, which is probably going to come out early 2026, realistically. The working title is Uncommon Sense, Winning in the Age of Victimhood. I'm planning for that to be, it's going to be my third book, but it's going to be my first one that goes through a major publisher, most likely. And I want it to have a big global impact. So I'm very excited about that, even though I can't give away too much and it's still quite a way away.
Yeah, great. And where can people find you if they're interested in learning more?
Sure. I'm on all social media at Zuby Music, or if you just want a single link, just go to zubymusic.com and you can find everything there.
Great. And my last question to round this up, what do you think the meaning of life is, my friend?
To do the best you can to serve humanity and God with the talents, abilities, and experiences that God gives you.
Great. Thank you, Zuby. Appreciate you. You're a legend. This has been really, really awesome. I feel like there's so much more we can talk about. So hopefully when your book comes out, let's do a round 2 and we can touch on it and then some other stuff.
Nice one, Adam. I appreciate it.
Cool. And if anyone's made it this far, please give the podcast a rating, a subscribe. Let us know your comments in the Q&A or in the comments on YouTube. Love to hear from you. Cool. Till next time.